So in this course, we're going to discuss the publication process. There are many areas that you can publish in. Journals perhaps is the most common, but there are also edited books and a whole variety of other places, conference proceedings, and etc., where you can get your work shown. Publishing in a journal will involve yourself in the review process. And in the review process, it's mostly what they call double blind. You don't know the reviewer and they don't know you. And they make comments on your paper, and based on the comments, the editor will decide whether your paper can be published. And this can be a very nasty process, but it could also provide you with some very important feedback for your work. There are many types of journals that you can look at. There are international journals, there are regional journals, that are journals in English, journals in your own language, journals that fit into a specific type of area of study, and journals that are more general in the types of articles they publish. One of the things that you have to do is analyze these journals and to see what is it that fits about the journal that may be a good place for your article to be published. That is, why should you publish in this journal? And I always suggest that you read the journals, read the articles in the journals, and actually later try to incorporate as much as from the articles that you read in the journals as possible. There are other kinds of journals now. One of the probably controversial areas are open access journals. Open access journals allow people to read the journal without having to pay for a subscription. And this can be very good. It helps spread your ideas farther around, and in fields where there is global research, people in countries outside of wealthy countries can afford to read the articles. It's also created a very controversial area where publishers who may trying to make money or profit off your work will charge you a lot of money, sometimes a couple $1,000s, to make your article open access. Another factor people often look at the judging a journal is what they call an impact factor. An impact factor is a mathematical formula that's used to measure the importance of the citations, that how often are articles from that journal being cited. And impact factors vary a great deal. And when you compare journals, you have to compare journals within a specific field. You can't compare a journal, say, in linguistics to a journal in microbiology. They're going to have much different range of impact factors. So one way of looking at a journal is which journals in your particular field have the highest impact factor. Another thing nowadays, with so many journals online, you can talk about how many articles are downloaded from those journals. And sometimes even within a journal, you can say, what are the most interesting articles from which are the most downloaded. This also can give you a little insight into the types of research that the journals will be publishing if you look at the most popular downloads. Journal publishing involves a whole lot of ethical decisions. Some of them are general rules about pre-publication. That can be very complicated in defining what pre-publication is. There's a general rule that says you cannot send your article to more than one journal at a time. And this has to do with the fact that journals are operated on a very low budget. The people, for example, who do the peer reviewing are rarely paid, and therefore the journals don't want to waste people's time with articles that may have already been published elsewhere. There are also issues relating to plagiarism, to falsification of data, to the role of authorship. There are many ethical issues that you have to consider will publishing. There's also a lot of scams you have to worry about now. False journals that charge you for publication. That's a very controversial issue. Journals that just don't have any reputation or have a false impact factor. Sometimes they're located in strange places, or they may not tell you the truth about who's on the editorial board, or some of the normal factors you use for judging a journal may not be accurate in these journals. And the course goes on, and we talk about other forms of writing that are related to publishing. And one of the obvious ones is that people need money to do research, to have time to write up their work. And generally how you can get some of that money, if you don't feel like working, is to get a grant. And grants can come from all different sources. They come from the university, they come from outside agencies. And we want to talk about grants. It's very important because they're a kind of writing where you have to specifically address the goals of the audience. So it's an interesting kind of writing in itself. Conferences are part of the publishing process. They're a place to go to get feedback, to network with other people, to learn about what are the controversial issues or what are the important issues in your field. And so when you go to write up your article, then you know much more what to address. And so it's also a source of feedback, some preliminary feedback on your work. The writing process, you've probably had a number of courses already in writing, and the question is, are you writing by yourself? Are you writing in a group? Are you writing up some research? Are you writing a different kind of article? Again, it's very important, and the idea in this course is that you keep writing for the whole semester. You just continue to write and rewrite and write and rewrite until you have a finished journal paper. That's a hope we hope to accomplish for the course. A lot about different styles. And again, these are things that are very particular now to the field. We don't talk about this too much in the course, but we expect some things about you need to read the journals. At this point, you're going to learn a lot about writing from reading articles that are already published. Some journals give, in their guidelines, they give criteria for style, including how long the paper is, the type of language you want to use. But the best way is to look at articles published. How are they organized? What kinds of grammar do they use? Look at what's already published in the journal that you choose to publish in. And that's the best way of learning about writing at this stage. Same thing with the organization of the paper. You want to look how papers in this journal are organized. Now again, sometimes the guidelines for authors will tell you how to organize them, but if you want to see, is how long is the introduction? How many paragraphs is an introduction? How many paragraphs is the conclusion? Does it have a method section, the discussion, results section? How long is the review of the literature review? All of these questions you want to look at just from a journal and get a kind of sense of how each journal does it in a little different way. There are different types of articles you can concern. There's sort of formal research articles that are less research articles, depending on your field. There are more informal articles. A lot of people recommend getting started with book reviews, which don't count as much in your career, but they're a good way of getting your name in print. Different types of audiences. Some journals obviously have very specific audiences. They may know a lot about your field. Other journals have a more general audience, maybe sort of just anybody in your field. So, for example, if the journal is sponsored by a teaching organization, it's going to have teachers from all over, not just specific in your field. If it's sponsored by a specific field or an organization in a specific field, then the audience might be much more specific, and they may have a lot more background about what you're talking about. There's a lot of bias, both editors and peer reviewers, and hopefully editors will put some of their biases. But again, if you look at journals, you'll see that some kinds of journals publish certain kinds of research, maybe not other kinds of research. I know as personally, as someone who's written about technology, there's some journals where the editors are interested in technology. There's some journals that hardly ever publish on technology. And so this is kind of a bias. Sometimes as editors shift, there's different biases. So again, you need to kind of try to get a sense of that by looking through the journal itself. So that gives you an overview of the course and the kinds of things we'll be discussing in the class sessions. And again, we have individual tutorials, so if you want to have specific questions, that's where we deal with specific aspects of your writing. Welcome, and we look forward to working with you this semester.